G'day, I'm Will Anderson. Welcome to Gruen. We'll meet our panel in a moment, but first, the other day when I was glued to the ABC, as I always am, and totally not watching The Bachelorette, I saw this hair commercial.
I'm not a blonde. I'm not a brunette. I'm a blonde.
I'm a blonde? Don't be fooled by the luck she's got. She is still Jenny from the Brock. Blonde. Hey, L'Oreal, we already have a name for that colour. It's light brown. Bridiots. It's blonde, get it? Because they combined brown and blonde. I guess it's better than combining blonde and brown and getting blown. Or blown. Oh. Oh, that's better. There's a slogan for L'Oreal. Get blown. Because you're worth it. Like, I don't know why people feel the need to colour their hair. I mean, obviously, this is my natural colour. I mean, I dye my eyebrows blonde. OK, my real hair is brown and red, but I coloured it because I was sick of waking up with breadhead. And even worse, now I'm turning grey. I mean, I guess I should be grateful I'm not going bald. L'Oreal knows that to flog hair care products, you need a spokesperson who is famous, charismatic and has great hair. But that doesn't always work out, as this real shampoo ad from Turkey shows.
Kadın elbisesi giymiyorsan kadın şampuanı da kullanma. Artık %100 erkek şampuanı Biomen var.
What brickhead thought that was a good idea? Gives a whole new meaning to hair furor. Hair furor. That's a great joke. Not surprisingly, that ad was withdrawn after complaints from Turkey's Jewish community. Carlsberg made a more successful pitch to men recently when they launched a range of grooming products made with beer.
First time I heard we were supposed to make a beauty series for men, I thought it was a joke.
No, you get your six-pack on one hand with the Carlsberg and you get your six-pack as a shampoo. Why not?
Why not? I'm going to get them confused and drink a six-pack of shampoo. And then I'll have to drink a six-pack of conditioner to wash it down. Talk about hair of the dog. But no one sells shampoo to blokes quite like Dove Brazil.
Ô, Diego. Oi. Você fez alguma coisa no cabelo? É que ele tá com um efeito de comercial de shampoo de mulher. Como você... Sério? Deve ser o shampoo que você tá usando.
Sexy and free.
Shampoo feminino não foi feito para isso.
Whatever you think of that ad, his hair was a lovely shade of blonde. Time to welcome our panel from Network 10, Russell Howcroft, and from Leo Burnett, Todd Sampson.
Yep.
They're joined by self-described marketing bloke Toby Ralph, and from One Green Bean, Claire Salvetti. If you want to understand a brand, talk to the customers.
It was so really cool. Yeah, we got to touch him and stuff, and it was
to shake his hand. It was really awesome.
Yeah.
It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It felt great. It was amazing.
Those crazed fans weren't for One Direction or Justin Bieber. No, they were welcoming Pope Francis to America last week. They weren't believers, they were believers. From the moment Francis arrived in Washington, there was more messaging than the Da Vinci Code. He landed on a Pope-branded Alitalia plane, greeted dignitaries, blessed kids, and was whisked away in this.
The Fiat, flanked by a legion of SUVs, wound its way towards Washington. Onlookers lined the route, waving at Pope Francis, welcoming him to America.
Oh, Mr. Bean goes to the USA. Fiat, Alitalia, both Italian companies. Russell, what would the deal be between these companies and the Pope?
Well, don't you love it, Will, that even the Pope is a vehicle for brands? Yeah? And even it is pretty amazing, and even the Pope can be a vehicle for awesome Italian brands. I mean, this is where he gets lucky, because, of course, he lives in the Vatican, despite the fact he's Argentinian, and he can hang out with these brilliant brands like Fiat and Alitalia, and in effect, he becomes a global spokesperson for those brands. And, of course, those brands are then going to have an amazing commercial rub-off effect. I don't know what the deal is, if you like, between the Vatican and the Italian government, but, of course, there is, if you like, some sort of deal whereby when he travels and the kit that he uses, it should be Italian kit. It's just like the royal family in Britain, when they travel and the stuff they use is British, because they become, if you like, the highest spokesperson of all for industry in those countries.
I don't think the relationship between those brands would be directly with the Pope. I think it would be with the Vatican. Because if you break down, like, I mean, Catholicism may be inspired by God, but it's marketed exactly the same as every other brand on the planet. So the Pope is the brand ambassador for Catholicism, and you've got the, you know, the churches are the distribution, and the client is the Vatican, and the Bible is basically the guidelines, the brand guidelines. And so I think the relationship would be with the Vatican, and the reason that would be an Italian one is, as we know, the Vatican is incredibly powerful. In fact, they own up to 40% of Rome. So I could see them having plenty of influence over what car he drives.
You know, the Catholic Church is a far bigger brand than Fiat. It's got more assets than Apple. It's got better distribution than McDonald's. It's got more customers than the biggest 10 banks put together. Their core product costs nothing to make. And when they make a profit, they pay a tax rate that would make Google jealous.
Fiat got plenty of free coverage.
What would Jesus drive?
I love the Fiat. Arriving in that Fiat.
And more about that Fiat.
No fancy limousine. That is a Fiat.
For this town, that is a very humble car.
They also capitalised on the moment with this tweet. His Holiness knows how to make an entrance, which was then swiftly deleted. Thou shalt not gloat. Claire, are there risks for brands trying to cash in on the Pope?
Yeah, there are huge risks. I mean, the Pope is a spiritual and a religious icon. His mission is to serve people and help the poor. And that's about as far removed as you can get from marketing and consumerism. So you have to be careful. I mean, Fiat is interesting because they had an amazing opportunity to be associated with the Pope by driving him off the tarmac. Awesome. But then they went and tweeted, and it takes it from a wonderful association to a blatant marketing plug, and that's where it gets a bit icky.
But there's more upside, I think, Will, than downside. I mean, there's some risk. I mean, that is the closest a brand's going to get, getting a nod from God, really. I mean, that's... But the downside is, if they overuse it and the Pope actually comes out and says, we do not endorse that brand, that's 2 thumbs down from God, and that would be a very bad thing for the brand.
What about the fact that it was a tiny little Fiat? Because, I mean, obviously Fiat have, like, much bigger and better cars than that. Was that an obvious choice, do you think, Toby?
Yeah, again, I mean, if you think of the Vatican, they own a bank, they own property trusts, they own massive share portfolios, they own hospitals and universities and schools, and all. They're a very, very wealthy, more wealthy than any corporation. So, and they preach austerity and humility, and it's against their core brand values. So to have a Pope who's a little parsimonious is finally showing that they practice what they preach.
It's also about sending a signal. So the little Fiat, it's about sending a signal back into the bureaucracy, if you like, of the Vatican. So, of course, the bureaucracy has been used to lots of trinkets, lots of toys and lots of stretch limousines. And so it is a bit of a flip that's going on here, and it's actually an advertisement to the inner workings of the Vatican on what is, if you like, hopefully the new method.
I mean, it's brilliant, that vision of him just driving off in that tiny... It looks like a clown car. You imagine that when he gets out the other end, like 18 other popes will get out. Did I say cashing in? Check out this. It's the official US Tour Pope bobblehead. You play with it while wearing your official Pope T-shirt. Can't believe Todd's not wearing one. Drink from your official Pope coffee cup and admiring your official Pope medallion, all of which you brought home in your official Pope tote bag, which you got at the official Pope-Up store. This is my favourite. The Catholic Church has even endorsed an official Pope Tour milkshake.
There were 3 options here. The winner is called #Pope in Philly. It's made of vanilla ice cream and shortbread. It's supposed to reflect Pope Francis's simplistic nature.
His milkshake brings all the worshippers to the Mass. There was also bootleg merchandise on sale too, from Pope Corn to the Pope Toaster, which burns the image of the Pope into your breakfast. The Father, the Bun, the Holy Toast. All this for a Pope who rails against corporate greed. Todd, does that matter?
Yeah, there's a bit of an irony here because the global church, Catholic Church, is a massive business. It is a big, big corporation. And their biggest customer are American Catholics. They give upwards of $150 million per week into the collection basket. So it's been declining in America. So this whole focus of celebritydom and all the merchandise and everything is fitting the Pope back into American culture. And in that way, we know what's happening, the Francis effect, people attending church now, up 20% in America.
But there's also transparency where the money's going. So the Pope bobblehead, they're now saying, you know what, that's going to go into this central fund, which we're then using to fund a symposium on families. Yeah, so there's a bit of a change, if you like, around more transparency with the money. And as we know, they've had people go in there and try and, if you like, clean things up. And I think as long as there is that transparency, sell the merch and here's where the money's going to go and here's why it's good for everyone, I think it's perfectly valid thing to do.
The difficult bit is to work out for the general public which bit is official and which bit isn't, because for as many official Pope bobblehead things, there is also the unofficial pizza maker making the most of it. So that's when it's tough, when people have to work out where to spend their money.
But it is great fun, though, anyway, isn't it? It is great fun to have the toaster, and
that's the best bit.
And spread the love was the line. I think there's an awesome line, and it's just people sort of putting energy into it. Yeah, they're trying to get a commercial gain off it, but it's just showing, as Todd says, it's just driving into the culture, enjoying it, putting energy into it. Oh, I love it all.
The other thing with the church... Did you say you love it all?
I do.
By the way, these bobbleheads are awesome. Yeah. I'm not meant to endorse anything, but we got one for the office, and it's so much fun to just make his head go and go, can I masturbate? And he was like... While in the US, the Pope hung at the White House, canonised the saint, addressed Congress and the UN, dropped in on a Harlem school, held mass at Madison Square Garden, and visited a jail. He's handing him cigarettes. Toby, it's amazing to say this, but you once helped organise a papal tour.
I did.
How do you choose the events?
I don't. That's decided by a bunch of bishops in Italy.
So you don't, when you're organising the tour, you don't get any control over these opportunities?
You don't control that. What you do, I mean, you can't say, look, mate, I've got your spot on Q&A or anything like that. He's not a normal client.
I mean, people would be brave to tweet Burns on the Pope.
But what you do is, basically, everyone wants to see him. You try and maximise media access to him without compromising security. And then you manage the photo ops in terms of when he appears, you want a black person, a yellow person, a white person, an old person, a young person, a couple of babies, and chuck in an ecstatic nun. You want you want the photos to look good, and that's what you do on a papal tour at a local level.
I just love how evil you are. How did you work with the Pope? You must have been like the devil on the shoulder.
I was sponsored by a beer company to do it. It was fantastic. They brought out an in-house brand called the Vatican.
The Fiat was another symbol of the Pope's frugality. Within weeks of being elected in 2013, Francis replaced the golden papal chair with a wooden one. Probably got it at IKEA. Caught the bus, carried his own luggage, moved into the workers' residence at the Vatican and washed the feet of prisoners. He also insisted on dressing differently. The previous Pope wore custom-made red kangaroo leather shoes, but this Pope is only ever seen in black lace-ups. Pope Francis is so humble, he apparently even shops at Coles. Claire, what's the value in appearing thrifty?
Thrifty. Well, here you can see that actions speak louder than words. And Pope Francis is extremely thrifty. You can see it in so many different ways. He drives a Ford Focus around his hometown in Rome. He then puts a kicked-up pair of shoes on and comes to the US. And what it means is he's essentially showing us his values through what he wears. And that is a life of simplicity and being really, really humble. But the really interesting thing about being thrifty is that for years, the Catholic Church has struggled with a negative reputation. All of a sudden, this new guy's come along. He's doing the smallest, tiniest actions in wearing a different pair of shoes, and he's making amazing global headlines.
Yeah.
It's incredible for the Catholic Church, what he's doing.
It's also, for me, it's incredible the power of just a smiley face. You know, and it's quite fascinating, isn't it? And I think that we're experiencing that now here in Australia. And for me, when he has, as I say, he's got this very beaming face, smiling face, and I think the world at the moment quite likes that, yeah, because there's some dark stuff happening, and there's some extreme dark stuff happening, and then you've almost got the extreme at the other end, symbolised by Pope Francis. I think that is maybe more powerful than we maybe at first think.
I think that he's desperate to differentiate from the other popes. So the bling bishop that he got rid of, and, you know, I think he's trying to stand apart. And he's very, very good at branding, even down to personal branding, because our first experience in branding is our name, generally. And he's named after a hippie saint that was really good with the poor. And so he is the only Pope Francis, as opposed to, you know, Pope John Paul and the, 1, 2, and 3. He's been branding, he's been putting this image out for a very, very long time.
It's important to recognise that he was elected. So, you know, his peers have chosen that was the right cat at the right time. So it's, yes, he has got an amazing, you know, his brand, if you like, is incredible. But the church has decided that this is the appropriate time to have that person.
But by the way, did you just describe electing a pope as finding the right cat at the right time?
I did. And you know what?
Who's gonna be our cat in the hat?
And I reckon he is the right cat at the right time.
Behind every great man is an even better PR machine. In 2013, the Vatican hired consulting firm McKinsey to look after its communications and took on former Fox News correspondent Greg Burke as a senior PR advisor. Todd, how do we tell where the Pope ends and the PR starts?
I think they're one and the same in terms of his role as a brand ambassador. So the best way to increase the sale of a product, in this case, Catholicism, is to improve the product. The second best way is to improve the seller. And he is an improved seller. And he hasn't, the genius of what they've done, I think the Vatican has pulled off a PR stroke of genius. He hasn't changed anything. He's only talked about change. So he's basically changed the wrapping, and the conversion rates are going up, and the people's support is going up without actually changing the product itself.
Well, of course, they're trying to change, well, the product itself, difficult to change, but they're trying to change the bureaucracy. That's the core part of this. And what I think is interesting for me is you get third-party suppliers in, even if you're the church. You get in a McKinsey, you get in a KPMG, because you actually need outsiders to advise you on how best to change. It's very difficult to change from within.
But that PR guy, I mean, what an amazing job. He's come in, he gets to work with Pope Francis. And the reason that Pope Francis is so good at what he does is because he's authentic, he is his own brand, he is newsworthy, he's got a new point of view, and he's extremely relevant. He's capturing audiences that no other Pope has done before, like the US Congress.
And it's really interesting how he's differentiating. He's doing it by, in some ways, disassociating with the product, isn't he? Because everyone's saying he's so different than the church, or he's so different than what we know of traditional Catholicism. And, you know, even in America, we cannot put aside the need of him to convert Americans for money for the church. And his whole lenient spoken words on homophobia and all of these things appeal to the American audience because the majority of Americans believe in marriage equality. So it's excellent messaging and branding of a new pope.
Now, an important variable that we measure is the notion of esteem. So in brands, so is that brand held in high esteem? And it's actually very, very difficult to be held in a high esteem. So this cat here clearly is held in very high esteem. And if that keeps going, you know, there is going to be this fantastic change that happens as a result, because highly esteemed brands actually do generate behaviour change.
Pope Francis isn't just the humble Pope. He's the cool Pope, the digital Pope. He tweets. He has his own emojis. He takes selfies. Hashtag actually blessed. He's a Facebook-like in human form. He even blessed bikies and had pizza delivered straight to his Pope-mobile. He really likes to get out among his followers, like this moment.
Landing in Philadelphia, Francis unexpectedly stopped his motorcade and got out of his Fiat when he spotted a 10-year-old boy in a wheelchair. He kissed and blessed Michael Keating.
Toby, when the Pope goes off script like that, how freaked out would the handlers be?
Completely. Minders liaise with the Secret Service or protective services here, and they're very, very good, but they can't protect against every moody loner with a gun, particularly in America, where there's as many guns as people. And if the Pope gets assassinated on your watch, you can forget that promotion.
Oops, we're cool though, right? But these are still not controllable situations. The minute you go out in public, the minute you accept a pizza from a stranger, you can't control what's going to happen next. Claire, you work in this, like, if you're working with someone in a PR sense, would that scare you?
Yes. Right. It's absolutely. You don't know what is going to happen, and you have to prepare for everything. And the interesting thing about the Pope is that clearly he feels he has God looking over him. Not everyone feels like that. So he's removed the bulletproof glass from his Pope-mobile. But what that means for his people around him is that they have to constantly be looking to see if that might impact him in any way. It would be a really tough job.
And of course, doing something like he did there only builds brand Pope Francis, and it just makes him even more loved. And, you know, the image of the girl behind, you know, taking the photograph, I mean, that is as powerful as the blessing that he's doing. It's pretty awesome stuff.
Because sometimes the best PR is the stuff that goes viral is the unscripted stuff. And that moment was, I think, possibly the most beautiful moment of his tour.
The Pope also appeared on the front cover of gossip mag People. Seems like a wasted opportunity to call it Popal. He hung out with celebs including Shakira, Eva Longoria, Martin Sheen, Aretha Franklin, and even Mark Wahlberg.
That right there was truly the voice of an angel. But then he whispered in my ear that he loved the movie Ted. And I told him that was not appropriate for a boy of his age. Holy Father, please forgive me.
He forgave him, but he didn't forgive him for Ted too. Russell, is it good for the Pope to be viewed as just another celebrity in this sense?
Well, I think what is good for the Pope is if the celebrities are differential to him, and so, which is what's occurred there. So that, again, if you like, puts him above them. And I think that association is fantastic because, of course, it does mean that you're on the front cover and therefore you're spreading the message. You know, the media, in the end, is the vehicle that's required in order to spread the word. And it happens for free because, of course, the Pope is going to be published. There's no transaction going on here. There's no financial transaction. So hanging out with celebrities, that means that he'll be covered. And as I say, if the celebrities are differential to him, all power to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole Francis effect is true. You know, 70% of Americans believe the church is going to make major changes. Him becoming or being a celebrity is making them more popular. And often increased popularity is increased profit. And I think it's good for the church and it's helping grow in America.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows the church has had its problems, most notably with child sexual abuse. This Pope has made progressive remarks on issues such as divorce, immigration, abortion, homosexuality and climate change. In the US, some have reacted to his remarks like this.
The Pope is saying we have to give and give and give, the rich. We have to give and give and give until we're all poor. This is just pure Marxism coming out of the mouth of the Pope. There's no such unfettered capitalism that doesn't exist anywhere.
He talks about the horror of capitalism. He's anti-trickle-down economics. He supports the Iranian deal.
His job is to get souls into heaven, period. His job is not to tell governments how to spend money.
Yeah. Remember when Jesus fed the masses with the miracle of trickle-down economics? The Pope is about poverty. The Vatican has its own bank. The Pope is a brand and the Church is a brand. Toby, what happens if those brands collide?
A conflict like that can't last. It needs to be resolved. New leaders get a honeymoon period and they very often challenge the orthodoxy during that time. I mean, if you think of Malcolm Turnbull now and the Pope, they're doing very similar things. They're seeming more liberal, small-level liberal, on same-sex marriage, on climate change and all those issues, and people love them for it. However, long-term, if there's no substantial change, the brand will suffer market share loss and the leader will get turfed out.
Yeah, I think that he is changing the wrapping, not the product itself, and that's marketing. And, you know, only in marketing can you talk about change and people actually think it happened. And I think that and they're doing that very well. But I think the church is changing. We all know that the church is their distribution, and it's old, and it's turning off a lot of young people. And that's where Hillsong comes in. They've changed the whole way that works from a branding point of view. And I think the church used to be you build it, literally, in the village, in the city, and they will come. I think the church has changed that now. Now they're going, we're going to use marketing to make that connection a bit faster.
This is the era of authenticity and transparency. And what Pope Francis is trying to do is reflect that. So it's actually a very modern way that he's going about communicating. Now, of course, what they are trying to do is then change this bureaucracy, or the curia. They're trying to change what has been the same for hundreds and hundreds of years. The issue is, he's 78 years of age. Is he going to have enough? Is there enough time in order for the changes that everyone knows need to be made? Is there going to be enough time to make those changes? Because you can't ask change like that to happen quickly. It's going to require a lot of management, a lot of persuasion, and a lot of driving around, looking frugal, demonstrating the sort of church that you think that the Catholic Church should be. There's a huge task ahead.
You know, McKinsey did a study looking at how long change takes, and they concluded that, as a broad rule of thumb, for every 7 years you've existed, it takes a year to change. And, you know, Catholicism's been around for 2000, so...
Right, exactly.
It'll be a long way.
Exactly.
McKinsey's going to make a lot of money.
You really want to effectively lead your flock, there's only one question you should ask yourself. What would Donald do? What would the Republican reality TV relic do? Well, he'd do what he did in 2010 and get chatty with his own flock in this bizarre commercial for a brand nobody was asking for, Trump mattresses.
So what do you think of my Trump Home mattress collection by Serta? Finally, the same luxury and comfort I demand in my hotels.
Oh, they'll never count sheep again.
Listen, why don't you come work for me?
What do you have in mind?
Something you were born to do.
Welcome to room 9.
Looking good, number 9, looking good.
Where's your dignity?
Just a reminder, the man talking to the sheep is running for president. Now the pitch, where we tackle difficult real-world briefs. And briefs don't come more difficult than this. In the past 5 years, Australia's had 5 Prime Ministers. That's more Prime Ministers than real women on Ashley Madison. So this week, we've turned to the next generation. The Young Bloods are a national body for advertising hotshots under 30. And we've asked them to come up with a campaign to restore our faith in politicians. Can they do it? Please welcome from Queensland, Harry McEwen, and from WA, Lucy Stolwinder. Welcome. Harry, how did you run your campaign?
We wanted to give a voice to the good politicians that do great work every day.
Let's have a look.
I like to think I'm a regular kind of guy.
I work long hours, often 7 days a week.
often travelling interstate away from my family.
I do it because I want to help.
Help not only my family, but also my community.
Why? I believe in a great place to raise children.
Health benefits.
Free education.
Endless professional opportunities.
And freedom of speech.
I believe in Australia being the greatest nation on earth.
I plan to keep it that way, and I hope you do too.
I am Carolyn.
I am Richard.
I am Daniel. I am a politician.
Our politicians believe in Australia. Shouldn't Australia believe in our politicians?
All right, Lucy, where did you cast your vote?
So we came to the conclusion that pollies are people too, and they're just trying to do the right thing.
Let's have a look.
Oh, you said you were going to mow the lawn.
Oh, it's raining outside, so I thought I'd clean the kitchen.
Oh, my God. You're such a flip-flopper. I don't know how I can trust anything you say anymore. I'm getting a divorce.
G'day, mate. Spare some money for the environment?
Oh, yeah?
No, spare some money for the hospitals. We need more beds.
Well, we need more trees.
That's ridiculous. Global warming. It's happening.
Air is important too.
I like trees. Save the seal.
Here you go.
Oh, we don't want vegetables. Chocolate wood.
I'm just trying to do what's best for you.
Imagine if every choice you made pissed off half of Australia. Let's give our pollies a break.
Russell Howcroft, which did you prefer?
Well, I really liked Harry, number one, because I think that might actually restore people's faith in politicians. Well done.
Claire?
I'll go Lucy number 2 because it really, really rung home. I love the phrases in it.
Toby?
Lucy number 2, I agree with you.
And last but definitely not least, Todd?
I like how they made us the problem as opposed to the politicians, so I'm also going with number 2.
Oh, congratulations, number 2. You both did a great job, but congratulations. That's how our panel saw it, and of course, if you disagree, tell us on Facebook or Twitter, or just cut out the middleman and tweet at Q&A. Pizza, a topic so cheesy it only seems fitting to circle right back to Donald Trump.
It's wrong, isn't it?
But it feels so right.
Then it's a deal?
Yes, we eat our pizza the wrong way.
Crust first. You'll want to eat it the wrong way. Crust first.
May I have the last slice?
Actually, you're only entitled to half.
20 years later, much like Trump, crusts have only gotten cheesier, thicker, and even more stuffed.
What do you get when a Pizza Hut pizza hooks up with a golden 4 in 20 pie? Australia's favourite love child, the 4 in 20 stuffed crust. Get it delivered today.
What do you get when a pizza hooks up with a pie? Lock in diarrhea, Eddie. That is not the love child of a pizza and a pie. I think that pizza was sleeping with a petrol station. It doesn't even look good, and it's probably had $1 zillion of food styling. Claire, what is the purpose of these sort of food stunts?
I don't know, I'm a bit transfixed by the pizza pie thing. So it's really interesting. Essentially, it's 2 brands coming together to create an entirely new product. And that's awesome because, firstly, it is a reason for people to go back into your restaurant and try it. It's something new they haven't seen before. People seek an adventure when they eat food, so that's a great thing too. But also, moreover, it's really hard sometimes to get talkability around a fast food joint. So what this does is it's a news piece. I mean, that is new news.
And new news or novelty doesn't just capture your eye, it actually captures your brain. Like, it triggers a sense of curiosity and a sense of exploration. It actually boosts dopamine as well. So people actually go out to try and eat this product. And those businesses are promotional businesses. So they have their regular products, and then they put in promotions throughout the year to spike sales and get people in, because they know that once people come in, they're probably going to get other things while they're there.
Pizza Hut used to be market leaders. They're now half the size of Domino's, who make more profit per store. So they're shrinking and they're in trouble, so they're trying to act like a challenger brand. That's what they're doing here. This is outrage management 101. You come up with something outrageous, try and pick a fight with the health authority about it, and you multiply your promotional budget incredibly.
You have to give them full points for innovation and creativity, don't you?
No, you do.
No, you do not have to in the ad. Do you want to see what it looked like in real life? People posted photos to the internet. Here's one. Look at this.
I believe the first one.
Pizza Hut already has given us crust stuffed with Vegemite, cheeseburger, Doritos and hot dogs. There's also an entire subculture of YouTube videos where the finest food critics sample these creations.
Yep. Just as I thought. It tastes like I'm a complete fucking idiot.
You should get him as a judge for MasterChef. Now, Russ, we always try to declare conflicts of interest on this show, and you're the only person on this panel, I believe, who owns a pie factory.
Yes.
So... Who are these products aimed at?
In society now, there's so many rules, there's so many regulations, there's so many people saying no. And I think that what this is actually, it's almost freedom food. It's almost food... It's almost food for libertarians, you know? Because it's like, just get out of my face and let me eat what I want to eat, you know?
Just let me eat this and die in peace.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful proposition. So sure, it's comedy food and it's stunt food, but in the end, I think the underlying strength of these things is that it is a finger up to all of you people saying no.
Yeah, I think...
Yeah. Can't wait to see that in the promo.
The whole product development around crust is an interesting one. It's a classic marketing solving a problem we didn't know we had. So what they found is that people were throwing away a lot of crusts. So then they thought, maybe we should leverage that opportunity. And they started putting things in the crust. And they put on hundreds of millions of dollars because of that one innovation. It looks stupid, but it's very, very clever from a business point of view.
Yeah.
Well, how much are these products for breakfast radio? Every time one of these things comes out, all you hear is people, you know, the next morning using it as content on air. How much of this is just to get press around it?
It's an amazing news story if you're a brand like Pizza Hut. I mean, to look at, it's absolutely fascinating. It's like looking at someone that's had a lot of plastic surgery. You know it's rude to look, but you can't look away. You're kind of like... And it's a great thing to sell into media. I mean, who's ever heard of a pizza with pies in the crust?
Entirely.
You know, it's a completely easy sell. They would have got loads of coverage, and it is extremely shareable. You can imagine sending it to your mate going, oh, we've got to do this tonight, boys. You know?
It certainly captured the stoner mark.
It's amazing to think about the effort that it must take to actually make that happen. Yeah, to get the Pizza Hut people, get the 4 and 20 people to design this thing. I mean, the amount of man-hours that's gone into developing that bit of stoner food is pretty incredible. It is.
Haven't they just said, put the pizza in the middle, plonk the pies on the outside? No. Meeting over, guys. If you read the fine print on these ads, there's a warning. No, it's not heart failure and imminent death, but limited time only. They last 6 to 8 weeks, then they drift off the menus and into retirement. Todd, if they were so good, why wouldn't you keep them on the menu all year round?
I think there's two things going on there. The first one is they're promotional products, so they're very expensive to make versus the regular products. Often because they're co-branded, so there's licensing deals, there's lots of stuff. They're expensive products, so they don't keep them for very long. But the other thing is limited offers. We know that when it says limited, it immediately sparks scarcity, and scarcity immediately sparks us to take action now. And they're promotional products designed to spike sales.
These things are built for advertising.
Yeah.
That's their whole point.
These are for coverage, not consumption.
KFC memorably brought us the Double Down, made with fillets instead of buns. But in the Philippines, they go even further. They have the Double Down Dog. Worst yoga position ever. As well as the Chizza, an unholy combination of chicken and pizza.
From outer space, nakita ko sabay kinagat fresh topping sa chicken fillet. Nasarapan at umorder pa, chizza pie na sobrang box ng chizza pie. Di basta pizza, di lang din basta manok.
I will survive. No, you won't. You can't advertise tobacco, but you can advertise food. You'd probably be better smoking than eating. Toby, don't fast food companies have some responsibility not to kill us?
As a broad general principle, it's a bad idea to kill customers. That said, when you've got a low-value, mass-market product like a fast food, frankly, if you lose a few hundred customers, it won't show on your profit.
It is fascinating, though, isn't it, now, in our society, in our wealthy society, it is fascinating that food has become a bad thing, or the notion that food companies are potentially the enemy. That is sort of really weird.
But these companies have a responsibility in sharing information, so putting kilojoules on their menu boards, for example, so you are informed when you buy. But the reality is, it's up to individuals to know what they should and shouldn't eat. Otherwise, we'll turn into a nanny state.
Well, I must admit, in both your defence, and I wouldn't normally agree on this topic, but if you look at that and think, oh, that might be healthy...
Yeah, that's right.
then perhaps we don't need you here anymore.
But there's a very important thing that you need to do in marketing and advertising. Every morning when you wake up, you actually have to make a choice. Is the consumer silly or is the consumer bright? And if you think the consumer's silly, then you'll go off and do a whole series of things in how you do your marketing. If you think they're bright, then equally you'll go off and do a whole series of things. And so I personally like to think that the consumer is bright enough to work out what they want to eat, when they want to eat it, what price they want to pay.
But what the science does show is that we have a cognitive bias when it comes to restraint, and that we will pretty much eat to finish as opposed to eat to full. It's actually a terrible habit we give our children. And the danger with this is that cognitive bias, that restraint, lack of restraint, if you chow down one of those pie things for yourself, you may never be getting up. So that's the danger.
The frankenfood trend is fully global, and it'll surprise absolutely none of us to know the Americans view it as their own.
What's more American than a cheeseburger? This cheeseburger, loaded with a hot dog and potato chips, in the hands of all-American model Samantha Hoops, in a hot tub, in a pickup truck, driven by an American bull rider, on an aircraft carrier, under the gaze of Lady Liberty, as she admires the most American thick burger, with a split hot dog and kettle-cooked potato chips on a fresh-baked bun.
Of course, if that truly was the most American thick burger, it wouldn't come on a bun, it'd come on a gun. That's just about all for tonight. Please thank our panel, Russell, Claire, Toby and Todd. Tonight, we leave you with the latest crack at the title of Best Local Ad of All Time. The winner takes home this highly prized golden branding iron. The G is backwards on purpose. Some like their pies stuffed in pizza. Others like them from factories owned by one of our panellists. But personally, I like to eat pies while I'm hiking, served piping hot from the bushes by the baker in this next ad from Western Victoria. We will see you next week.
It's a treat to eat at Greg's Bakery. You know you shouldn't see the Grampians without a